Hi, this is Miss Winakur, and today we're going to be reading a book called Rosie Revere, Engineer. So let's get started, and we are going to learn about how readers get ready to read by thinking about the book and looking at the text and the pictures. So when we're reading, we are going to know that because we're readers, we know the job of the story's beginning is to tell us the setting, the character, and the problem. So as we're reading, we're going to observe what the setting is, that's where the story takes place, who the characters are, and what the problem is. And then when we're reading, I want you to pay attention really closely to picture or text clues to figure out the when of the story, to look at the picture and text clues to figure out the why of the story, and picture and text clues to figure out the who is telling the story and how that might affect how the problem is solved. So we are going to look about who is talking. So is a narrator telling the story? Is the main character telling the story? We will see. Are we going to see the inside of their head? Meaning, are we going to see the character talk aloud in the story? We will find out. So when we are done reading, it's going to be your turn. I want you to find your own book and have someone read it to you, or you can read it to yourself and record a video showing the book pages where you learned the characters, the setting, and the problem. And then you can go ahead and tell someone you know what happened in the book. So let's get started to read, and make sure you pay attention to the text and the pictures to figure out the setting, the problem, and the characters. Picture at the beginning, but again, we're going to be paying attention to the characters, the setting, and the problem. And we're going to be using the text, which is the words in the book. And then we're going to be looking at the pictures. So let's get started. Rosie Revere, Engineer, written by Andrea, Beaty, illustrated by David Roberts. So this is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Greer's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. Do you guys notice the rhyming pattern? But no one saw her. She peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed where they'd never be seen. So why do you think she's hiding? Our main character is Rosie Revere. She wants to be an engineer, but why do you think she's hiding her creations? I wonder why. We're going to find out. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser, and helium pants. The uncle she loved most was the zookeeper, Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head. From parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese, which everyone knows keeps the pythons away. And when it was finished, young Rosie was proud, but Fred slapped his knee and he chucked out loud. He laughed till he wheezed and his eyes filled with tears. All to the horror of Rosie Revere, who stood there embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed. She looked at the cheese hat, and then she looked away. I love it, Fred hooted. Oh, truly I do. But Rosie Revere knew that could not be true. She stuck the cheese hat on her back of her shelf, and after that day, she kept her dreams to herself. So let's look at these words. Embarrassed. Embarrassed means to cause or feel self-consciously confused or stressed. Have you ever been embarrassed about something? And then perplexed. To block the understanding, especially of confusing or bewildered, to make something difficult to understand. So that's basically when you're just shocked. Like, I'm perplexed. You can say, oh, I'm shocked. that something happened or you got embarrassed by something, and your reaction, if you look at Rosie's face, she's perplexed. And then dismayed. To cause or lose courage or feel concern. So she was super proud of this beautiful invention that she made for her uncle. But Fred laughed and he didn't react the way that Rosie thought. So she felt embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed, and she lost courage in herself. So ever since that, she kept her dreams to herself. So let's see what happens. How does she get over that? And that's how it went until one autumn day, her oldest relation showed up for a stay. Her great Aunt Rose was truly a dynamo who worked with building airplanes a long, long time ago. She told Rosie tales of the things she had done and goals she had checked off her list one by one. She gave a smile as she looked to the sky. The only thrill on my list is to fly. But time never lingers as long as it seems. I'll chalk that one up to an old lady's dreams. That night, as Rosie lay wide-eyed in bed, a daring idea crept into her head. Could she build a gizmo to help her aunt fly? She looked at the cheese hat and said, "No, not I." But questions are tricky and some hold tight. But this one kept Rosie wide awake at night. So when dawn approached and red streaks lit the sky, young Rosie knew how to make her aunt fly. So dawn is basically when you're sleeping and you wake up and it's still kind of dark outside, right as the sun hits the horizon. Horizon's the side-to-side movement. Right as the sun hits the horizon, that's when it's dawn. When the sun is about to even go up and light up the whole sky. She worked and worked till the day was half gone, then hauled her cheese copter out of the lawn to give her invention a test just to see the ridiculous flop it might turn out to be. Oh, I love this kind of book. Strapped into the cockpit, she flipped on the switch. The Helio cheese copter splattered and twitched. It floated a moment and whirled round and round, then froze for a heartbeat and crashed to the ground. So if you were Rosie right now, how would you feel? So we have to think about engineers. Engineers build something. Every time you build something, is it going to go exactly the way that you thought? Not specifically. So let's find out to see what she does and how she acts. Then Rosie heard laughter and turned around to see the old woman laughing slapped her knee. She laughed until she wheezed and her eyes filled with tears. All the horror of Rosie Revere, who thought, "Oh, never, oh no, not ever again will I try to build something to sputter or spin or build with a lever, a switch, or a gear, and never will I be a great engineer." So at this point, she's about to give up. She turned around to leave, but then Great Aunt Rose grabbed hold of young Rosie and pulled her in close and hugged her and kissed her and started to cry. "You did it! Hooray! It's a perfect first try. The great flop is over. It's time for the next." Young Rosie was baffled, embarrassed, and perplexed. "I failed," said dear Rosie. "It's just made of trash. Didn't you see the cheese copter crash?" "Yes," said her great aunt, "it crashed, that is true. But first it did what it just needed to do. Before it crashed, Rosie, before that, it flew." "Your brilliant first flop was a raging success. Come on, let's get busy and on to the next." She handed a notebook to Rosie Revere, who smiled at her aunt as it became clear. Life might have its failures, but this was not it. The only failure can come if you quit. They worked till the sun sneaked away to its bed. Aunt Rose tied her handkerchief around Rosie's head and sent her to sleep with an smile ear to ear to dream the bold dreams of a great engineer. At Blue River Creek, all the kids in grade 2 build gizmos and gadgets and doohickeys too. With each perfect failure, they stand and they cheer, but not quite as proudly as Rosie Revere. So what happened? So at the beginning of the story, Rosie built this thing for Fred, and then Fred was laughing at her and didn't make Rosie feel very good. But then Aunt Rose came and she was laughing too, but then she told Rosie to never give up. And so that changed Rosie's mindset. She turned a problem into a solution, because when you're an engineer, or if you're a scientist, or if you ever have a problem, you're not always going to get it right when you first solve it. But what's important here is that she learned to keep on trying and to make a different design, and it worked out for her. And now she's cheering on her classmates in her classroom, giving them the never give up personality. So now it's your turn to go and grab a book and see if you can find out the characters, the setting, and the problem. And if you look at our book, the setting is the classroom. And then we are not quite sure what the setting is when she's helping her aunt or when she's helping Fred, but we do know that the story does take place in her bedroom, because that's where she was dreaming. So remember, never give up and keep on trying. Persevering, which means to keep on trying, is exactly what life is all about. And then you're going to experience an amazing win once you figure out your problem. Thank you for reading with us. And again, this is Miss Winakur, and this is 21st Century.